One more.
Paul's gonna be late. He's still in his board meeting. Then he has to drive somewhere else to get Wi-Fi.
All right, need one more warm one.
As opposed to cold, Betsy.
Need a warm body test. Come on.
I'm pretty
Cold
cold.
outside.
It's chilly.
I don't know how warm I am, but I'm here.
You got her. Bingo.
It's like you invoked me into the meeting.
Why, thank you.
All right, so it
Bless
looks like
you.
Betsy, we have enough people to get started.
We do. Rock and roll.
All right, so welcome everyone to our Maine Recovery Council meeting held only virtually today. I will be chairing this meeting as Pat will be in transit. She's hoping to jump on at some point. Chastity is going to be leaving around 3:15, and no one has signed up for public comment for this meeting. So we will kick things off with introductions. Betsy, do you want to start?
Sure. Betsy Fitzgerald representing the litigating subdivisions.
Daryl,
Good afternoon. My name is Daryl Stewart, and I'm the acting state budget officer.
Melissa,
Hi, y'all. Melissa Hackett. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a policy associate with the Maine Children's Alliance.
Maggie,
Morning, everyone. I am Maggie McLaughlin, representing litigating subdivision.
and Liz.
Hi, Liz Blackwell-Moore, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Public Health for Cumberland County. And I will probably stay off video for as much as I can. My internet's been wonky today, so I apologize.
No worries. Joe,
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Everett. I'm the president and CEO at the Opportunity Alliance here in South Portland. And just to let you know, Tess, I have a little bit of a wonky schedule, so I'm going to be in and out of the meeting. So if there's any, I have to leave about 10 after 2 for a while. So if there's any voting, I think now we have enough votes. But if you need me, I may be back, but I'll keep on Zoom regardless. Thank you.
thanks, Joe. And Deb,
Hello, my name is Deb Poulin, and I am the Director of Clinical Services with the Office of Behavioral Health.
Todd,
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Todd Brackett. I'm the sheriff in Lincoln County.
Chastity.
Hey everyone, Chastity Toole, the executive director of the Recovery Council. And Tess already told you, but yes, I will be leaving at like 3 o'clock today. Luckily, though, I think today will be a shorter meeting, so everybody should be.
Great. Elizabeth,
Elizabeth Fortier, coordinator for the Recovery Council.
Brendan,
Brendan O'Neill with the Attorney General's Office.
and Grayson.
My name is Grayson Havens. I'm also with the Attorney General's Office.
And last but not least, Jamar.
Jamar Williams from the Recovery for the Council and Recovery Council.
Awesome. So our agenda today, we will go over the November minutes, chairperson's report. We'll do committee reports, staff reports, new business, and then we will adjourn. So to kick things off, I'm looking for votes for our November meeting minutes. Anyone has any changes or wants to make a motion?
I'll move the minutes as written.
Moved by Todd,
I'm happy to second.
seconded by Maggie. Grayson, can you call the vote?
Yes, just 1 second. Okay. Betsy Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Daryl Stewart,
Yes.
Deb Poulin,
Yes.
Jamar Williams,
Yes.
Joe Everett,
Yes.
Liz Blackwell-Moore,
Yes.
Maggie McLaughlin,
Yes.
Melissa Hackett,
Yes.
Tess Parks,
Yes.
Todd Brackett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. And then we had a special meeting on November 25th. There's minutes in the packet. Wondering if there's any comments, corrections, or otherwise looking for a motion to approve. Don't all jump at once.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Deb to approve, seconded by Todd. And Grayson, can you please call a roll?
Betsy Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Daryl Stewart,
Yes.
Deb Poulin,
Yes.
Jamar Williams,
Yes.
Joe Everett,
Yes.
Liz Blackwell Moore,
Yes.
Maggie McLaughlin,
Yes.
Melissa Hackett,
Yes.
Tess Parks,
Yes.
Todd Brackett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. So moving on to chairperson's report. We have our annual meeting January 8th of next year. Our bylaws state that the first meeting of the year is the annual meeting. In the packet, we have from Pat committee assignments for 2026. Pat is asking that if anyone would like to change committees, to let her know in advance of the next meeting. Chastity, am I missing anything from that item before I go to the next one? No. And for our next meeting, we will also have officer elections. And once we go to our governance update from Paul, we'll get a little bit more information from what we can expect with that at the next meeting. Pat also would like us to have another FOA training, something we haven't done in a while, and it's always good for everyone to be familiar with the statute. Chastity and Brendan will help coordinate that for us. And one thing, so Paul has not joined yet, so we'll come back to something special for Paul later on in the agenda. So that is it for me. Does anyone have any questions for me or that I can relay to Pat? All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Deb for a Finance Committee report.
Sure. We actually did not have the reconciliation for the previous month when we met, so we weren't able to go over that. I have since obtained it, which is great. So we'll go over 2 months in the next meeting. But one of the significant and probably most important topics that we discussed in the Finance Committee is related to emergency funding and the need for a process related to being able to release emergency funding. And it was also determined that it would be helpful if I reached out to program and grants. So I sent Joe an email just to let him know that we were talking about this and that we will likely need to work in concert regarding emergency funding. And Joe and I need to actually connect and have a conversation. But as I will be discussing with the Finance Committee, I think that the role of the Finance Committee is really to figure out the financial process of the release of funds, and that the program and grants is really about the eligibility and the application process. So you've got two pieces to this. So the committee should work in partnership, and more to come on that, but that's really the most significant information to share.
Thank you, Deb. And piggyback off of that, I attended the Finance Committee meeting and volunteered to write a draft off-grant cycle policy that I've shared with Chastity, and I believe the intent is to have that in front of program and grants for this coming Tuesday meeting. And then, of course, something that we'll be working in tandem, finance, program, and grants, both being able to review and provide feedback. Todd?
Yeah, I just it seems like Deborah, that when we were talking about it, the conversation was a little bit beyond just emergent issues, but what to do with small requests that we could turn around perhaps more quickly. So hopefully, Tess, that the draft that you have, I'll bring that up to the committee when we meet. But I just they're probably not the same. You know what I mean? The emergent thing might be a little bit different than what to do with small requests and contracting and where we get bogged down and trying to get money out the door kind of thing.
Can absolutely add that to discussion, Todd. Currently, as written, it does not include that, but I really came into drafting this with the idea that there would be many revisions, a lot of feedback, and it's really just a starting place because this is something that we've talked about in different committees and as a council for quite some time. And I'm really just hoping that we can put all of these thoughts and conversations into action. All right. Any other questions for Deb or finance? Chastity?
It's technically not for Deb or finance. It's for program and grants, I guess. Sending Tess's draft policy. I don't know if people care or want to look, but do you want the old one that we attempted and drafted and never followed through with, or start completely fresh?
I think
Start
having both
completely.
would be helpful, don't you, Joe?
Yeah, and I'm leaning, I think yeah, both, and I'm then leaning toward what Tess did because it's real time, and I'm assuming Tess that there's water under the bridge, so you probably have, but yeah, both would be great.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Finance? Not seeing any. The next finance committee meeting will be Friday, December 19th at 11 a.m. And next up, I will pass it over to Joe for program and grants. I think you're on mute, Joe.
We have not met for a while, the committee, so we have a pretty robust agenda, and we will be meeting on Tuesday, which is what, the 16th, I think, I believe. So anyone who's eager to attend with the committee, we'd love to have you, and then we'll report back out when we get to get back together in January. And that's my quick brief, Tess.
Thanks, Joe. We are just flying through this agenda. We have governance up next, but I'm not seeing Paul. So how about we pass it over to Liz or Melissa for subcommittee on school funding? Any updates you have?
Do you want me to do it? How about you chime in?
I'd love that for us.
Okay. We had our first meeting on last week, and I'm just trying to open the notes here really quickly. We had everyone that we had invited to come was in attendance. One was virtual, but we had a great group of folks who range from really working in schools and doing work in special ed, but also working on systems within schools and that to support young people with higher needs, and also folks from disability rights organizations and parent organizations. So it was a great, really robust group. We had presentations really from Brendan about the MOU and about some of the school funding proposals that have come out from the state. The federal settlement council.
Brendan can jump in.
Yeah, it's national, not federal.
National, sorry, national. And so that was helpful because there may be some lessons learned in some ways that request for proposal went out to folks across this country, schools across the country. So we may be able to piggyback on some of the structures and the ways in which they wrote that grant application. So we looked at that, and then we spent, an hour plus talking about the gaps and the challenges and what's happening in schools for young people who have been impacted by opioids and the opioid problem. And it was a robust conversation with people with deep knowledge and lots of, they shared some reports and surveys that have been done. So we really were starting to get a really good picture of what's going on. Melissa, do you have things you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge in this public meeting, like how grateful I am to these folks that step forward for these work groups where they really have the expertise and they're in the field and maybe can help fill gaps in who we all represented this council. And it seemed like there were some pretty good alignment about what folks were sharing and talking about. We have we've set an agenda for 2 more meetings with a goal of kind of thinking about how priorities would be established and then what making recommendations would look like to the council, recognizing we're also going to try to move at the pace that folks feel like there's consensus and a good understanding of what they're recommending, both in terms of what gets funded and if there are, we've started to tee up conversations about broad applications versus targeted approaches and how that might be, that guidance might be offered to the council in terms of an RFP process. Brendan, anything you want to add? I really appreciated the presentation you did about that, the national funding and the Maine schools that had applied through that and how we might look to some of that information and examples in terms of what we're looking to do here in Maine.
Just just briefly, as Liz described, there's a national fund that the governance documents of which largely echo, if not mirror, Maine's schools MOU. And they just completed an application and funding process through which 6 Maine school districts received grants, and along with I want to say like 50, a total of 50 school districts nationwide. And because of the similarities between that fund and Maine's MOU, I presented to the group about those similarities and the possibilities that could, that those similarities could create, some shorthands for the group to be able to, or for the council to be able to stand up an RFP. You know, plagiarizing or piggybacking on that existing process. And I'm happy to make the presentation to the council as well at some point. I think that was about it.
Yeah, I think, Brendan, I appreciate that suggestion. I think it will be helpful for us to think about, we have the example of the prevention work group. What does presenting to the council look like? And it does feel like being able to share the national and then to be able to say, this is why the work group is recommending A, B, or C in terms of approach would be helpful. We are working with the group to figure out like what's the context that the council needs to then understand the guidance and the recommendations that are being made by the group. And that does feel like an important part.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I mean, I would like for some of these folks to share, for you to really be able to hear some of the stuff that's happening, because the thing I was really struck by, I have folks who work in schools every day. To hear this group talk about what's happening and how young people have been and families have been impacted, it's just like, it was like I walked away slightly overwhelmed, just had that moment that day of like, wow, it's so much. And it's really thinking about how these young people and their families also really do deserve this funding as well. So it is 1.25 million right now for something that feels like we could be spending $1 billion on with this group. So I do think it's worth everyone really hearing some of it from them directly so that we can decide as a group, like perhaps 1.25 is the starting point, and that we want to think about what are some other gaps that you might want to fund with the other funding, and not thinking that we have to be boxed into like they only get 3% when they are really dealing with the problem in a really intense way, with the next generation of young people who've been impacted. So we will keep that in mind and want to share that with you as when they complete their work. Sorry, Brendan.
No, that's fine. The one thing that I took away from the national group was that the money, like our program, this program that the council has to stand up is targeting money to school districts, but the point that the targeting of the national fund was to try to help two groups of kids. One was those who were born with neonatal abstinence syndrome, and the second group is those who, and I may not say this well or accurately, but children who have been affected by opioid use disorder in their families or in their communities, and trying to help schools through school districts, help those kids. And the points that raises for me is just to say in this public meeting, in this space, that school districts, and I think even schools in Maine aren't limited to this fund to this this application that we're talking about now. What we're talking about now, as this group knows, is a 3% chunk of the Recovery Council's fund that the Recovery Council has to has to set up a grant to school districts. But school districts aren't limited to that fund. They can apply to the council as a whole. Schools can also. School districts can apply to all of the counties, cities, and towns that directly received opioid money. This isn't well, it's only for school districts. School districts aren't limited to only these funds.
I think that's all we've got. Thank you.
Awesome. That was a great report. I definitely want to hear more about what you're learning and may attend. I think it's something that I would just really like to know more about, not always having a lot of exposure of what's happening in schools. Does anyone have any questions for Melissa or Liz before we go to the next item? Seeing none. So Paul is not here just yet, but we have some committee members from governance with us, so we can go over the minutes. I'm happy to take the lead on talking about it, but if there's anyone else from governance that would like to jump in and give the update, that works as well. Not seeing anyone. All right, so we had a number of nominations come in for the officers for next year. So the nominations that came in would be Pat Kimball as chair. I accepted a nomination for vice chair for next year. Betsy was nominated for secretary. And then we have two nominations for treasurer, Deb Poulin and Daryl Stewart. Our committee, talked about what the possibility would be of having co-treasurers. And, Brendan had provided his opinion that this would not be precluded from our bylaws. Our bylaws do not explicitly say that you can't have two. But our committee also talked about for the potential of, what if there was a conflict between how the two treasurers were interpreting something. And then our bylaws also do have that the treasurer needs to be the chair of the finance committee. So we ultimately decided as a group that we would recommend for the next meeting in January at our annual meeting that the council ultimately vote in one treasurer of those nominations, with the understanding that anyone having a passion for finance, being a part of that committee, supporting with anything to do with finances, that will always be an option for both nominees. So that was what came up in terms of nominations. Does anyone have any questions, or does anyone want to jump in and elaborate more on that topic? Deb?
Yes, I would actually. I understand why you would not want to have co-treasurers, but did you contemplate co-chairs? So in a scenario like that, you would have the one treasurer, but you would have a chair and a co-chair of the committee. And the reason I like that, and am really trying to advocate for that, is twofold. One is that different people can bring different talent and different expertise to the committee, and be quasi, not even necessarily leads per se. You can have your treasurer, but the other piece is related to continuity and consistency. So if for some reason the chair or the co-chair can't be in a meeting, at least one person is there that is able to lead and facilitate and have the information. So if that wasn't contemplated in the governance committee, I would like to ask the larger committee to contemplate chairs and co-chairs should there be a desire on the various committees.
Okay, so Deb, you're proposing there would be one treasurer, and then there could be two co-chairs of the finance, and one of those co-chairs is also the treasurer.
Either that structure or the treasurer is the chair and there's a co-chair. Either would be fine. Okay. But I'm just really trying to think about that duality a little bit.
And we did, I think, contemplate that, and that didn't we decide that the treasurer could have the ability to appoint a co-chair once you form the committee? Is that accurate, committee members who were there? So whoever the treasurer could, the first meeting could say, I'm going to appoint the co-chair. Is that right, Brendan? Is that acceptable? So Deb, we did discuss that.
I do think that would be fine, and if we really needed to, the council could. The bylaws provide for the finance committee to be comprised of the treasurer as its chair and the other council members as appointed, subject to approval by the council. And if necessary, the council could use its authority to designate somebody as a co-chair. Yeah, so I think it would be fine. I do think that the treasurer certainly has to be, at least the treasurer would have the ultimate authority as chairperson. And I think there could be a co-chairperson that is the actions of which are able to be kind of overridden, if you will, by the treasurer. So
Thank you.
And I think that's a good model as we go into this next year. And Pat's not here, but I think even the program grants committee should have a co-chair if Pat names me as the chair, because I'm going to be terming out in a year. So I think what you're saying, Deb, is a good idea for all the committees. And it's a bit of a part-time job, so having more help.
I second that emotion, Joe. I was just about to suggest the same thing. Like, it's probably a good model for all of them, when you're the
Yeah.
chair and you're facilitating and you have to be at the meeting, it's just nice to have a backup already in line. And I think there's good leadership transitioning that could happen there too.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other feedback on that item for nominations or treasurer? Not seeing any. So another big topic for governance was regarding our annual public meeting that we held in person and on Zoom in November, where we could hear from members of the public the needs that they're seeing, challenges, barriers. In our committee, we talked about ways that we could potentially improve engagement. Some other committee members felt that we need to incorporate some of the feedback that we have received. I think it might be helpful, since we have all of us here together, or most of us, if there's anyone that wants to share feedback, including governance committee members, of how they felt that the public forum went, or suggestions for the future. I'll open that up. Todd?
But it's a question more than a thought. I wonder if it's worthwhile to consider, or one of the things we could consider is how we look at the annual public forum, especially now where we have public forum on every agenda. You know what I mean? And an opportunity, although I don't know, and Brendan, maybe you could help, or somebody. I know our public forum for the regular agenda, there are rules, I think, or guidelines, and those guidelines include things like you don't come and ask for funding, or something like that, or something specific. It's been a while since I looked at it, so forgive me if I have that wrong, and that may be different for quote unquote the annual public hearing. So I, I just think that now that we're up and running, and things are going and chugging along and moving, and grants are coming and going, and that the need that we saw early on, or in our first, or the response that we saw at our first public meeting or public hearing, I think this last one may be a reflection of the fact that, folks are more in tune, they know what's going on, they know where we're at. At that point, there'd been no real formal announcement for any new funding opportunities. So that might change it, but I was just wondering if there's a way to incorporate both, or accomplish both through that public forum portion of our regular agenda.
Thanks, Todd. Liz?
Perhaps somebody needs to answer that question. I'm sorry. I have a totally different comment about the public forum, but I understand that, Todd, there was sort of a question in there that I don't know that I can answer. But it seemed like a bylaws question. Am I right?
In terms of our public comment, the 15 minutes for every monthly meeting, we do have language in there asking that members of the public are not making specific funding requests. And I don't think that is an element of the public meeting. I could be wrong, looking at Chastity or maybe Brendan.
The public forum language in the bylaws is very undefined. Trying to remember. I'm just trying to find it. I think it just was that the council had to have a public forum. Yeah. at least one meeting each year, so it could be any time, could be, shall include a public forum through which the council can receive input from stakeholders and the public. And the council, as I recall, has put sort of very general guidelines around speaking at the public forum, but doesn't have any specific rules. And to the extent that the council sees, you know, and thinks there's an opportunity to sort of streamline things and wants to collapse the public forum and the opportunity to speak at each meeting, that would have to be an amendment to the bylaw to remove the requirement for a public forum, but annual public forum.
Liz?
One thought I had was that a way to have not just have like open public comment, but to have it be a little more focused could be when we do another round of we've been talking about assessment and thinking about like, well, who's funding what and what do we want to fund next? Like, it could be really great to have like some sort of a draft of some things for people, like an assessment process for then people to be responding to, where they're saying, yes, I agree with what you have here, or no, you left out this or that or the other thing. Since we do now have public comment and we receive information, it could be a way just to get people really focused in on like, do you like where we're going in this next direction? So it's a little more targeted responses that I think could be really helpful for us. Just another thought for how to frame another public forum for this coming year.
Good feedback. Todd? Is your hand a new hand or yeah?
Yeah, I think what I was trying to say, I think, is that we have a public forum every meeting. If we take Liz's concept, which I like, and just one of our public forums, whether it's the one in January or whatever the council chooses, is an expanded forum, you know what I mean? Or an expanded public comment period that qualifies as our bylaw requirement to have an annual, rather than planning a whole special day around it. It doesn't really matter to me either way. I was just trying to think of a way to simplify it, where we have direct public access at every meeting now.
I think the one thing that I guess I would want to change if we were to do something like that is that there would be an opportunity for people to be able to directly talk about their financial situation and what funding they're needed. Because I've often wondered if that provision in our public comment about not being able to ask about what you need is preventing engagement. I've noticed that we have not had a lot of public comment. So that's just my opinion on it. Maggie?
I really like the spirit of that, but I'm wondering if it can be governed through the process that we decide on for emergency funding as opposed to public comment per se. I just worry if every single institution in the state that is a nonprofit, and in many cases healthcare institution, is struggling with finances right now. And so I think it's an unfair burden to put out, like it creates an unfair space. Some are going to be able to come, some are going to have really clean books. Some are not going to be able to come, or maybe won't have as clean of books to articulate their arguments as well. Everybody, though, will have a need. And so if the intention is to identify what the need is at a broad base, I think that can still be done with the existing language by saying they're allowed to say that, generally we should prioritize this or that, just not prioritize this specific funding for this specific institution. And then the kind of emergency needs could then be articulated through the emergency process. Otherwise, I feel like there wouldn't be a way to close it off because every institution has a need and every institution could do more if they had more resources.
Yeah, I think let me try to reframe. Maybe my suggestion isn't that every single public comment before our regular meeting would allow that, but I think there needs to be points in time where organizations can articulate that because that's how we hear that recovery centers are weeks away from closing. And like to me, that is information that we absolutely need as we're probably going to start seeing more organizations coming closer to closing because that's information that like if not us to know that like who would need to know that.
Deb, I don't think she can see you. Your hand kind of like blends in with your background.
Sorry, Deb, your hand was blending
Nope,
in with the 988.
that's all right. I don't have to speak, but I was actually thinking along the same lines as Maggie, slightly different, but similar. And that is if we want to contemplate the big if we want to contemplate having the opportunity to have people from the public come in and ask for emergency funding or funding or otherwise, I would not want to make that available until we first decided what our processes are and what our thresholds are and what constitutes emergency funding versus one-time small funding and otherwise. And so speaking off the cuff, I think that there would be certainly ceilings, floors and ceilings related to how much we would allow for an emergency rapid fund, how much we would allow for a request that doesn't come through a proposal process and otherwise. So there are just a lot of operational pieces. I don't think they're particularly difficult. We just don't have them in place. And so once we have that, then we would be able to educate the public as to what the expectations would be should they come and ask and petition. But if we open it up before we have a process, it's the cart before the horse, and then we're scrambling. And I don't want to make promises we can't fulfill financially until we have those in place.
Anyone else have any other feedback for the forum or ideas? Chastity, you had a really good idea during our call about coffee with counselors.
Oh, yeah, another state who does a quarterly meeting where it's like coffee with, it's not council, but it would be like coffee with the council where it's like a discussion so people can come talk at us or ask us questions.
I have just as I'm thinking as we're talking about the emergency funding and the needs that may crop up from that, just wondering how organizations are managing money so that we could, if there's a mechanism that we could possibly put into place so that organizations aren't facing or at least know a little bit far off that they're facing emergency funding, like they kind of, I don't want to say look at their books, but in essence, um, kind of forecast what they're going to be looking at 3 to 6 months out, so that they don't have to worry about, or not worry about, but at least be aware of funding shortfalls that may be coming up, so that they can manage their finance portions better. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
So, Jamar, are you saying that, like, wondering if there's a program or service that could help organizations be able to forecast that, or is that information that we would want to know as a council?
If there's a service that may be in place to do so, so that um, uh, they don't have as many emergency situations on their hands or unable to forecast out a little bit further.
Like some of that, like TA, tech support.
Yes, I don't know if that's in place in some of these organizations or if that currently stands. So if it doesn't or does it, I guess does it, Tess?
I would not know. Defer to other counselors if anyone's aware of those types of resources. Brendan?
Thanks, Tess. To Jamar's point, there are, you know, I think there's, and many of you probably know better than I do, different organizations in Maine that may be in a position to provide technical assistance to the Recovery Council's grantees who, who request it, or who could benefit from it, especially some of the more shoestring, smaller or startup organizations, and they may be too busy to like do the research to figure out even that they need something or who to call. And I want, and it's, it may, as you all know, one of the council's mandates is to, work on sort of coordination among all the grantees of, not the grantees, but all the recipients of the settlement funding, the Recovery Council, the cities, counties, and towns, but also among the grantees. And I wonder if there's as part of the council's collaboration and coordination role, it could identify organizations in Maine Association of Nonprofits, or whatever, there's a philanthropy one, and so on, who are in a position to make available to small, shoestring grantees of the council's group of grantees, like make sure, do you guys know about these people? Here's that kind of thing, like sort of a connecting, as with the goal being that the council's grants are as protected as possible, so that the money gets put to the best use possible, so it's not put at risk because people are struggling.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brendan. All right, any other feedback on this? All right, we will go on to the next agenda item, and I will turn it over to Chastity and Elizabeth for ED and coordinator reports.
I think you're really just getting a bunch of updates from us. So, but maybe I'm actually going to lead you into another conversation thinking about policies. So we just recently got a question come in about a policy, and it's something Brenda and I have talked about before, and I think it should be on the council's radar to develop. And it's putting a policy together about non-allowable expenses. Brendan, was it South Carolina? Yeah, South Carolina had one, prohibited items. That's really good. And this comes up a lot. Like, I've had to go to Brendan multiple times, like, can you explain this to me? Is this allowed? And because it's some stuff that, like, it's close and there could be an argument made, but it's not close enough. So I think if whichever committee wanted to work on something like that, that would be great. And I could share South Carolina's too as some sort of a starting point.
Chastity, can you clarify what you're saying a little bit more? I'm
Yeah.
out in left field.
So us having a policy together about what our grantees, what can they spend the money on? Like, are there items that they actually can't spend the money on? Looking at South Carolina's, some of the general things they have listed, activities that aren't evidence-based or promising practices for opioid abatement, um, law enforcement activities related to interdiction or criminal processing, police equipment like vest, guns, uniforms, tasers, vehicles, non-FDA approved medications. And then it breaks down like some personnel stuff. Like for the personnel, I think we've got our we've got our policy on that. So I think that one we actually have defined a little bit better. And did that help, Betsy? Okay. And just yesterday, some policy people that put what all the states are doing together reached out asking if we had a policy, and it raised it again. So
Chastity, can you take
Brendan?
a stab at writing that, let you know, since you know it best? And then we could deliberate it at the Program and Grants Committee, but if you could take that and compile it, is that possible?
yeah,
You just had a good list going there, so.
copy a lot from theirs. Yeah.
I
Brendan,
recommend reading the South Carolina policy. I thought it was very, thoughtful as a whole, and it goes beyond just a list. It has, I thought, sort of a philosophy about it, if I remember that correctly.
It does. And I feel like some of this comes up a lot. Like I know someone just asked Tess and I a week or so ago, like what the council's position was on something. I don't even remember what it was. And it's like we don't have a position on it. But if we had a policy, that's a position. Before I go to other updates, any other questions on or feedback on that part? All right. So
Before you go on, I'm sorry, I have to keep finding my buttons here. Um, can you forward the South Carolina policy around, please?
yes,
Great. And thank you for those examples. That was very helpful.
you're welcome, Betsy. Uh, so the retreat, talked about doing a retreat. It's not actually scheduled yet. There's two facilitator options. We've reached out and they're putting together basic, this is their experience, this is what they charge, proposals together for us. And of course, like we're in the holiday season, so it's terrible timing. The timeline that I proposed, and at least one says it's a doable timeline to get information back to us, is for the end of this year, send proposals back. Pat and I would set up a time to meet with them in the first week of the year. So we hopefully have information to bring back to the January meeting so we can make a decision, get a vote, and then start planning out. Because otherwise, we're just pushed out even further. With that in mind, are there any specific things that people want us to keep in mind in these conversations and trying to build this out with people? Like does everyone have like their own personal goal for what they'd like to see come out of the retreat? Melissa, your head nod, I want to put you on the spot because I feel like you have things to say.
Well, I can share what I think, but I actually think having a shared sense of what we want to achieve is going to be more effective. So I'd love to just sort of brainstorm with folks that we're excited about an opportunity to have a retreat. I'll just say high level. I think we are often doing things in a technical way, and it creates a space and an opportunity to sort of step back and say, like, what are our values and our approaches to doing the work? I think there's an opportunity for some relationship building that can come from this. So I think a retreat like this just creates more space than we typically have with each other to kind of go deeper. As I said, build relationship and kind of get get outside of the technical flow of the work and just talk more about like what we're bringing to the work, what our hopes and goals are, on a sort of like higher and deeper level.
Yes, Deb.
I know you can't see my hand, so I made it very obvious this time. I know that we talked in the larger council also just about the opportunity to get organized a little bit more. And there were some various categories that Pat had listed out. I wish she was here to offer them, but that was one of the areas that I got excited about is we're very much in this, okay, we're going to do what we need to do. We're going to figure it out as we go. And this gives us a chance to not figure it out as we go, but actually think in advance and have some plans in place and processes in place. I don't know how much will get done in one retreat, but if we could at least scratch the surface of that, that would, I think, be very helpful.
I have a random question, and this goes to everyone in thinking of all this. So I know we talked about it being like a full day. Is our intent like it's going to be normal council day and it turns into a full day, or have regular meeting and a separate day in whatever month it ends up being? And everyone has jobs and other places to go. So like really what do you all want? I don't want to push one or the other. Yeah, Maggie.
Maggie?
I would recommend when we do it, that month's council meeting is a remote one. That would prevent folks from having or at least a sense of needing to drive in twice. And then I wouldn't sacrifice the time by trying to bundle it on a day because I think it's gonna take a lot of time to unpack some of that.
I agree. So I was hoping people weren't hoping to do that because then we lose a lot too.
So I hate to break in again, but apparently where I am today is not clear. Maggie, in a sentence, what did you just say? Sorry.
No worries. Can you hear me okay?
I can right now. Yeah.
Okay. That we keep our regular MRC meeting, but we make it the month remote on the month that we're also doing retreat. And
Okay.
then we keep the retreat a full day in person.
Okay. Thank you.
And Chastity, can you add to the list for discussion topics of just looking at our staff capacity? And if you or Elizabeth have some feedback on, your experiences of like what you would envision or what would be helpful from your perspective, if like other positions are needed or if in the future they would be helpful. Melissa?
Sorry, guys, I get really excited about this stuff. And I don't want to preclude anybody else jumping in. I just want to build on what some others have shared. I think I would be looking for a facilitator to sort of structure this for us of like, what's our vision of the council? What do we currently feel like we're doing well? What do we need more support with? I think just sort of structuring in that way gives us an opportunity. Because I think, Deb, you made me think of this. Like we've had a lot of conversations about our organization, our structure, right? And then Tess, you talk about staff and capacity. So I think it's sort of like an exercise of like, what do we hope aspirationally for the council? Where are we at? How will we get there? What's needed to get there? I think might help us get into some of that staffing, other things that we really, again, just can't really talk about in the month to month meetings because we're doing the work of the council.
Okay, funding wise. Oh, sorry, Todd. You go.
I was just curious. I like the idea. Are you thinking of just an all day meeting at the DHS building where we normally meet? Or are you thinking about a more remote location?
Um, I mean, hopefully at the place we normally meet, but if I mean, what do you guys want? You're the drivers of this, so if you want us to be looking different, we can try.
I just wanted to offer if you, I don't know what you're looking for, and we just have a really close relationship down here by nature with Kiev Wavis. The Kennedy Learning Center at Kiev is a wonderful venue. It's inexpensive. Anyway, I don't know what the budget might be. I'm not, but I'd be glad to try to, if that's something that, just throw that out for what it's. We've had retreats there before. There, it's a beautiful spot right on the lake, any time of the year. It's a nice facility, and they have everything that we would need, including lunch and coffee and whatever else.
Okay.
I was hoping somebody was going to offer up a beautiful camp on a lake. So I know you didn't quite do that, Todd, but that's where my brain went to. Like, I think thinking about we are all across the state, what is central to most people, but I do think, again, wanting to be really sensitive to cost, stepping out of the normal space that we meet might create an opportunity for us to, again, like sort of work together differently, think differently. So I do think there's a benefit to being in a different space if that's possible. And also happy to make the DHHS office work if that works better in terms of cost and location for everybody.
I mean, free is always gonna be best, but we can look at things. Cost is going to be my next question is, um, does the council want to put a budget on this as the max we're willing to spend for any of this, or wait until we have proposals to come back and do it then?
I do think it's important. Oh, I didn't raise my hand.
You're okay.
I do think it's important for you and the staff to know what you're working with. It's pretty hard to plan a retreat if you don't know what your budget is.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
I mean, ballpark, I think you need to at least have a ballpark of what the council thinks is an appropriate spend, if anything, for a retreat. I can say right out of the gate, $10,000 is not going to be supported. But I mean, like within reason, are you talking about $200? Are you talking about $1,500? Are you talking about? I mean, I think that that's really important. And facilitators come in at all sorts of different prices. So I almost wonder if we should wait and see what those proposals are and then launch from there, not to delay things further, but that certainly will inform what we might be comfortable working with once we've seen that.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't word it well because that was more my question.
Melissa?
I think I agree with Deb. It's sort of hard. It's like the cart before the horse with this, but it might be helpful to have an estimate of like, if we do it at the DHHS office and there's lunch and there's facilitation, this is ballpark what we're looking at. If we were looking to do it offsite, this is what we're looking at, and to be able to bring that back to the council to sort of look at the spectrum. And then I think folks will have maybe a little bit more to work with in terms of what the ballpark cost might be. I wouldn't do too much extensive work, but just like a couple of places externally in terms of costing that out, and then the free space.
Okay. And location wise, like central Maine area. Okay.
I can tell you that there's a facilitator that's pretty frequently used across the department, and she just facilitated a meeting in total with 13 hours. So 13 hours total of prep time and facilitation time. Her bid came in at $1,495. So, and she's used frequently. So when I say that there's a range of cost estimates in terms of proposals, there's a range and they can be pricey.
Yeah. Um, okay. Any other, Elizabeth, sorry.
I do just want to say if we're thinking of having this soon, and we're thinking maybe it'll be in the DHHS building, we should reach out to them because that building goes very quickly. Not to push us in one direction, but just because we would probably have very limited dates there. That's why we're online today. We thought we had it reserved today and we did not. So just that space goes very quickly. So don't want us to think that we could have it much quicker for free at that space, and then likely that would not be possible.
I have a hard time envisioning that it would be before March. So, in thinking of what it takes with getting votes, contracts, and all of it, like March is probably the earliest, which also sounds so far away. And I realize that, but it's where we are.
I think with the prep and planning that's needed for that, Chastity, that's like an earliest date, right? For just like getting a space, doing prep with the facilitator, lining that all up. And I think in a state like Maine, it's helpful to think about like, are we going to run into travel challenges for folks commuting? So yeah, I think that's real. Those are real considerations.
All right, before I move on from that, anything else? Todd.
I feel like this is a great example of how traditionally we get bogged down. It's just my observation. And I don't mean it maybe the way it sounds. I apologize. But maybe those of you that are passionate about this, I like the idea. I'm not a great facilitator kind of guy probably, but it seems like maybe we, like Melissa and anyone else that's passionate about it, could maybe work with Chastity, come up with some ideas about locations, venue, budget. You know what I mean? Without so at least we have something concrete for our next meeting, or you know what I mean? Doesn't necessarily just a thought, somebody that could help you, so we're not just starting all over again discussing this at the next meeting without having any more information.
Hopefully next meeting, I agree. So it not taking anything wrong. Hopefully next meeting, we just have to choose between the facilitators as like the big point. And then it's easy to do the behind the scenes work of coordinating. Easy, maybe not is a good word, but you know what I mean, hopefully. So other updates on things. PCG, I've reached out to them and offered some times to meet next week. I haven't heard back on a time yet, but they watched the meeting. They are aware of the concerns about the software and are excited to talk through and hopefully work with us, they said. So to be determined. On a similar note, we also met with Moss this week. We met with Moss recently. In regards, it was a twofold situation. So LD 110, which was the bill that went in and made it so the municipality, basically everyone but the Maine Recovery Council, had to do reporting, mandatory reporting, and Moss is building the dashboard. And so they reached out to us wanting to know what is going to be the easiest way to get our information, because we're not required, but it obviously makes sense for all of our information to be in this dashboard. And it's part of our MOU as well to work within existing things for an MOU. So we're working with them to figure out how to do all that. Everything that we already have is already public. So it isn't as bad for us as it sounded, even though we're the biggest pot and the most to report on, because a lot of our stuff is already out there and exists. But a second part of us meeting with them was how can they support and help us on our reporting evaluation end. So that way it's more streamlined across, and we're gathering what we really need to be gathering, because what we have right now for our reporting, like, it's a lot, and we need to streamline it. So they are going to put together, they have some ideas and also suggestions that we should ask PCG about the software to have those ideas be able to merge together to make it easier, like all around, so we don't have to do multiple systems, hopefully. They're going to put together a proposal to send back to us for, oh, hi, Paul, of how they may be able to help. So, not a huge update other than stay tuned. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself before I keep
Sure.
going?
I'm Paul Vinsel. I'm a recovery medicine physician in Lewiston.
Thank you,
And
Paul.
I'm a member of the board of the council. I'm sorry.
Let's see. The other big thing that I wanted to touch on outside, well, questions on the Moss part before I move on. No. Health resources and action. That is who it, from the prevention recommendations, the council contracted with so they could help us with the coalition funding and that whole RFP. We've met with them a couple times to get that process started, Liz, Elizabeth, and myself. And there will be several of you that we will be connecting you to them via email. Part of what they'll be doing on some of the background work is doing interviews with people. So council members who are part of the RFP process, people who had applied and got it, didn't get it, to be able to talk about what worked, what didn't, what are the challenges. So very soon, some of you will be being connected from that. Our goal, I know we said spring. Did we actually say a month, or just our goal is spring to launch the RFP? So March, April. There we go. And they'll do technical assistance with people who will be applying before, after application. So as that rolls out, we'll let folks know more. I think that's it. Those are all the big things I wanted to hit before I ended up leaving early. Junior Honor Society induction, so people know that I'm not just bailing to bail.
Congratulations to your daughter. It's awesome.
So, Elizabeth, do you have anything you?
No, not anything big. I know at finance talked about summarizing the first round of reporting, talking about where grantees are, what they're spending, and that first round that they've reported on. So from their start date of either May 2nd or May or June start date until October, end of September reporting is what has been due. And so where people are in terms of spending so far. So hopefully that can inform discussions about things like no cost extensions, and that, just because we've gotten a lot of questions about people having a hard time starting their programs, or delayed starts and things like that. So that information will probably go to finance, and then will probably make its way back to the next larger council. So there's not a lot of, there's probably about a third of the contracts. So be a significant conversation, but not as many as all 60, luckily, that we have to talk through now. But so hopefully we can dive into that. So yeah, that's really all for now.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So we are, I can't believe I'm even saying this and we've only been here for an hour and 15 minutes. I think that's a record. Do we have any new business before the council?
Hold on, prior, you have old business in your chair report from Pat now.
Yes. So I want to take the time to congratulate Dr. Paul Vinsel for his retirement and service in addiction medicine. I've had the pleasure and privilege of seeing Dr. Vinsel in action at city councils, advocating for evidence-based practices and care and dignity for clients. It's been incredible to learn from you, and we thank you for your, service to your patients, and then advocating at large for people that truly need it and rely on advocates like you. Paul, is there anything you want to share about your retirement?
No, thank you very much. That's a surprise. I'm not, it has not sank in yet. Yesterday was my last day and I didn't leave till after 6. So, and then I spent all morning at another meeting. So it really hasn't sank in yet. But I hope that my advocacy does not end.
I hope it never ends, Paul.
And should I give governance report?
We did get through
Oh, okay.
governance. Yeah. Yeah, we flew through the agenda today. All right. So any new business? Not seeing any. We are now adjourned, and our next meeting will be January 8th of next year. Bye, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, all.
Bye, everyone. Take
Bye.
care.